Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll get started in just a moment. We want to give everyone a chance to get logged in. I hope you've had a wonderful day and you're ready for this amazing conversation. Let's just start in about 30 seconds. Great. We're going to get started because we also don't want to run out of time. We want to spend as much time on this conversation as we can. I am so excited to see you all this afternoon. I'm also excited to have my co-conspirator, co-collaborator, and board member with me, David Johnson. To tell you a bit about David, he is a dedicated leader and advocate for maternal and child health. He serves as a what do we call it? General counsel, is that correct? With
Part
CSG.
of our governance group, part of the finance group, and all things that Marie thinks is necessary for a attorney to support.
And so we feel very grateful to have his guidance on our team. And his day job, he is with CSG, which is a consulting company. He has a deep understanding of systems, and he has a particular focus around driving change, creating smart strategic leadership. And we're just truly fortunate to have him with us. I'm also excited to have our guest speaker, I'm trying to see your bio here, to introduce someone who brings a calm, grounding presence to every place he enters. I stole that from his bio. Well, I didn't, our intern did. Anthony Quarles. Anthony is a licensed mental health counselor with a heart for meeting people exactly where they are. He has years of experience working with folks from all walks of life. And in his position as a therapist, he creates a safe, non-judgmental space for healing and for people to discover healthier ways to move through life. Anthony holds a master's degree in clinical psychology from Alabama A&M, and he's licensed in multiple states, including Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, my home state, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Virginia. So as you can see, he's very serious about his work, and he also sees patients through telehealth. Welcome, Anthony. Welcome, David. Welcome to our audience. Do drop in the chat where you're joining us from. And we're going to talk tonight about the role of the father and regrounding. So I always say before I go any further, I know I go through the bio very quickly. It never quite illustrates the work that you do as an individual. So please feel free to share with our audience who you do it, why you're here, and all those other good things. And then I have to point out, David and I are not twinsies, but we have these beautiful T-shirts that we are selling as fundraisers for Birthing the Magic, our 501c3, and you can find them on our website. Anthony, I will let you share.
Yes. Thank you for the warm welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to hold space for fathers or anyone needing support, and learn how to reset and ground themselves and other techniques that are very valuable, in your day-to-day life. Currently, I work in private practice as a solo practitioner, supporting many different people. I have a lot of clients who are fathers who are trying to figure out how to navigate, fatherhood itself and society in the world we live in. It's always evolving and there's different changes. Parenting is, different than it was maybe when they were, brought up and different things like that. So just being a listening ear and being a supporter and giving them some, real strategies to navigate all these things and not feel alone in it is very, very impactful for them. And seeking help is, hard for a lot of people. So just making sure they feel, and understand that it's okay to need help, need support, want to talk.
Thank you, Anthony. If I can, real quick, just to give a little more about me and why I'm here and the importance of the work that Anthony does. is that I'm a father of two boys, two young men now, and a husband. And what I would share with you all is when my wife was with our first son and our second son, Marie had mentioned I'm an attorney, but I was a trial attorney at the time, and I have confidence in commanding courtrooms and influencing others. But when I got into the doctor's office, I recognized and I supported my wife first, my child. But through this process, I found that I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, and with all the confidence in the work that I'd done, didn't really find my voice during the process. Didn't really feel as if I was in the room or it was my place and I didn't want to get in the way. And through this and coming to Birthing the Magic Collaborative and the like, I've come to better understand in order to be an advocate for yourself or for others, you need to be able to find your voice. And so Anthony, through his work and talking to us about the journey and the path that we're going to be on today, will help in that. And I think it's a great gift that we have for those who have registered but can't be here, or for those who are here live. I hope you find it as useful as it has been for me as I continue to be on a journey of fatherhood. So thank you for that. Anthony, thank you for being here. And Marie, thank you for making the time for us to be able to learn more.
Making sure this is showing correctly.
We can see you.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
I think it went away.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it on the right
Okay.
screen.
Yep.
Can you see the PowerPoint, or what do you see? Sorry.
I saw it before on the second page of your presentation, then it went away.
Okay.
Here we go. Presenter view, no. I'm currently seeing the multiple pieces, like first slide, next slide, and then the multiple slides. The
Okay.
presenter view rather than the presentation view.
Is Marie able to support with getting it out of the presenter view?
It's on your computer, so
Okay.
we would need to change, but if you look at the, like at the little bottom of your screen, see, yeah, to the left, one more, see, that one, that should take it, right?
This one or that one?
That one.
Oh.
Hmm,
Sorry.
there we go. That was it.
Okay.
Perfect. There we go.
Got it. Yay.
Welcome to the Dad Reset, navigating fatherhood. Again, I'm Anthony Quarles, licensed professional counselor. Currently, I run solo practice with Quarles Counseling, been in mental health over 10 years or so, working with children, families, community mental health, private practice, children's services. Specialties include anxiety, cultural ethnic issues, depression, and of course, men's issues. So in order to set the tone, we can discuss that this will be a safe space, a space where everyone's free to share, everyone can talk about how their perspective as a father, and also be able to look at things from other people's perspectives. And with sharing in a safe space, no judgment. So fatherhood is different for everyone. And with that, it can be different perspectives and different advice that works for different people. And then with that, we'll be solution focused. Not here to just talk about what's hard. We're here to find the real practical strategies that you can actually use. So walking away with something helpful for your day-to-day life. We're going to have honest conversations about real stressors dads face, juggle work, family, dealing with pressure, and managing emotions. This is about figuring out how to move forward. So we can jump in, and I encourage participation. I encourage you to use the chat. At times, the ability to unmute and use your voice to discuss the certain topics we'll address today. The goal here is to avoid emotions or pretend they're not happening. So normalizing challenges, normalizing emotions, help regulate them and manage them in a healthy way is something we'll discuss, and it's possible. When you do that, you're not just helping yourself, you're showing up better for the families, building stronger bonds with your kids, and becoming more grounded in the kind of fathers you want to be. So today we're going to focus on tools that can help you do just that, practical strategies to navigate the stress, right? And practical strategies that help navigate the stress, ride the emotional waves, and protect your peace while doing one of the most important jobs is being a dad. But before we dive into those tools, I want to hear from you. Let's check in, and we'll have our first poll question.
So one of the great things is that Anthony set up polls for us, and the first question is, as a father, what has been your biggest challenge? Open the chat. The chat is open for any kind of discussion, but you can select it, and then we'll have a bit of discussion. Is that fair, Anthony?
Yeah, it's great.
All right. What has been your biggest challenge?
Can you guys see the poll?
Yes.
Okay. Is everyone voting? So far, no one's voted. Oh, some of our guests said that they're not fathers. And even if you're an expectant father, you can respond. But we do have a lot of practitioners who join our workshops. So we may not have a dad yet. So I'm going to go ahead and end it for now, Anthony. And then if any dads, if you want to drop in the chat, there is like challenges of balancing work and families.
So if I can, I dropped one in the chat. It's not about me, but just to get the conversation going. Challenging balancing work and families. Anthony, can you talk to us a little bit about that from your perspective?
Yeah. So balancing work and family responsibilities, that's, speaks to the challenge of trying to manage career demands while also being present and active at home, whether it's the long hours at work or the mental load of juggling both. Many fathers, people in general, of course, feel stretched thin trying to give their best in both spaces. So it's tough when it feels like there's never enough time or energy for everyone, everything.
So one of the things I would just say with regard to this, Anthony, is that we used to talk a lot about work-life balance, and then I'm hearing more say work-life integration, which just seems like there's no longer a balancing that's happening. The two are coming together, and I think there's increased pressure, stress that comes with how do I be in each of the moments separately? How do I be in that moment with my family when I should be and work's not creeping in? How do I be in the work moment when I should be? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it can be difficult to disconnect, work-life balance. Everyone discusses it, but a lot of times no one's teaching people how to. Um, a large part of it is communication. Sometimes it's not being open to discussing the hard things, like needing time for yourself. But one way I describe it to people is the better you are, the better the people in your life will be. So pouring into yourself, filling up your own cup, and then it runs over, and having something to give to everybody in your life. A lot of people, their cup is empty because they're stretched thin, they're giving everything to everyone. And in return, that leads to a lot of, stress and mental health struggles.
Understood. That feels real for sure. The other one that I just give is this, and it's a constant. It doesn't stop. Starts when they're babies, they're children, they're toddlers and the like, and then they become young adults. But navigating the role of fatherhood. What kind of guidance or insights would you have for that long and very rewarding journey?
Yeah. Uh, fatherhood has evolved. Things are different than, some other times in history. So dads today are, more involved than ever, of course, and that shift can lead to some uncertainty. A lot more men and fathers are required to sometimes be more emotionally engaged, have some tougher conversations, be able to open up and express. So it's understanding that although things are changing, the role is evolving, it's giving yourself some grace and understanding, because oftentimes or sometimes I hear from clients that that wasn't their experience as a child. They didn't see that type of behavior modeled, or they didn't have a father in general. So giving yourself grace is really important to be able to, work through these forever, ever evolving changes as a father.
Grace, such a powerful word. I don't think there's enough of it. We definitely give it to others, but we don't give it to ourselves so much. Are there
Yeah.
any other topics in here that you want to talk about, or anybody have one that you would definitely want to hear Anthony go into a little deeper? And if not, Anthony, we can move to our next slide if you're ready to go.
Yeah.
All right.
So a lot of times with postpartum depression, it's often mentioned, of course, in regards to the mothers, and rightfully so. But what doesn't get talked about enough is fathers that go through postpartum depression, fathers that experience stress, anxiety, due to all the changes like we were discussing as fatherhood is evolving. So think about it. If you're adjusting to a completely new role, your routine is flipped upside down, sleep goes out the window, you're trying to figure out how to support your partner while also showing up as a parent and a capable father is honestly a lot for it. A lot of fathers are, support in therapy. And when the dads feel like they have to just push through sometimes without much support or space to talk, then what they're feeling can, overwhelm them. And with those overwhelming feelings, people handle it different ways. Some people isolate, some people shut down, some people um, are more emotional, but it can affect not just your home life, but the other areas of your life as well. So that's why it's important to raise more awareness about, men's mental health, fathers' mental health in general, not just for fatherhood, not just for you as a father, but it helps, the whole family and everyone's involved in your life. So when we acknowledge that these challenges are real, we can create a space for dads to get support. We're helping build, healthier families, and it makes things a lot more peaceful and stable in a lot of different environments. So when we speak on challenges, we can, talk more about the stress that comes from fathers, especially those who are new fathers.
So before we leave that, Yolanda just dropped in the chat, and I think it might be new for all of us. She said she just learned fathers experience PPD and asked a great question. How do we support dads who are supporting their partners? And I'll go a little further. We recognize in this moment it's about mom and baby, and dad's going through his thing. Yolanda's asking the question, how do we support dads in that? How should, whether as a practitioner, whether as a family support, or what advice would we also give to a dad to support in that kind of situation?
Yeah. With support, it can be difficult because a lot of some fathers, some men in general are suffering in silence. So sometimes people can see that something's going on with them or their behaviors, but a lot of, men I've talked to in therapy have learned to just say they're fine, say they're okay, dismiss some of those um, feelings and emotions and challenges they're facing. So a big key to that is working with whomever it is to be okay and create that safe space so they can be vulnerable. In order to help a lot of people, you have to you have to know what's going on with them. And if you don't know, then it's hard. It is really hard to support. But I think some of that is due to whatever relationship dynamic they have, or environment they're in. If they feel like it's okay to open up, if they feel like they're heard and seen, they're probably more likely to do so. And then those in situations where they don't feel comfortable, they can find support other places a lot of times too, like therapy or a support group or sometimes church for those. And that's, been helpful to understand sometimes the vulnerability may start in another place, but then it gives you that strength to have better and more open conversations with the people in your life.
Appreciate that, Anthony. And I think it's one of those things where we've all experienced it at one point. Once you sort of verbalize it to one person, somebody else might connect and say, hey, my cousin, my nephew, my uncle went through that. Or you know what? I went through that and can talk to it. So I appreciate giving space to the vulnerability to be able to provide support.
Yeah,
Great
for sure.
question, Yolanda.
And then, when we were just discussing postpartum depression and the mental health side of things, there are a lot of new fathers that experience high levels of stress. And oftentimes people are excited and they're engaged and they're looking forward to, but things quickly shift for them. So about 50% of new fathers experience high levels of stress, and they report that walking into fatherhood is very overwhelming. And sometimes they discuss it, sometimes they don't. And the stressors stem from multiple places. The feeling of the weight of growing a family, especially if there's maybe only one income, or finances are, maybe tight. And then there's the health of the partner and the child in general. There can be challenges there initially, and there's visits and there's all these things and these demands, as they're also still trying to simultaneously work and provide as well. And then there's, the balance of it all, trying to be a provider, trying to be a supporter, trying to be present physically and emotionally. There's a lot of stressors that sometimes new fathers aren't aware of, that aren't discussed maybe beforehand, during, the care and the conversations with loved ones or their doctor or whomever it may be. So there's that challenge to balance it all, work, home, sleep, relationships, but still show up fully. So a lot of dads don't feel like they have the space to talk about how heavy that can feel for them. So sometimes in therapy, that's one of their only few spaces, or with their friends, or other shared spaces, like I mentioned earlier. So this stat really highlights something we don't talk about enough: is the transition into fatherhood being a major shift for a lot of people. So it comes with high stress that often gets overlooked. And it's not just about the schedule, it's about the new identity that comes with it. It's new expectations and basically a whole new version of life for a lot of people. So this conversation like this matters because, we're here to normalize this experience and discuss it to a point where it's, people are more open and honest about how they feel, and kind of give it a language where people are able to talk through different ways and learn to manage their stress better instead of just pushing through everything.
Anthony, I greatly appreciate that. You touched on a number of points. I think about the joys of when you find out you're going to be a father, new father, and you do all this prep and you can read everything you want to read and all that kind of stuff. And when the time and moment happens, whatever books it was, it didn't tell me about the cost of formula if we needed it, or diapers, and okay, are we doing daycare, and we're both trying to go to work and these things, and you want to be successful at it, but everything that happens, whether it's, for us it was colic or whatever that thing is, it's the biggest moment in your life because you've never faced it before, and you look down and see this child who you recognize is dependent upon you knowing what to do, right? And so it builds up like day in, day out, like, oh, I can't do this and I can't. And I was fortunate enough to have my wife partner there to help and us to lean on and support. But sometimes there's also this fear of, well, she's going through her thing, right? So you just touched on so many different things that it probably isn't in a book. And going back to that support network and having to talk about it just really resonates. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And in what you said was a part of what we'll discuss later is, working towards sharing the load better, sharing, the responsibilities and the demands better of just parenthood in general. But before that, we'll break down the mental load of fatherhood even more and discuss, you know, stressors. Well, stress can be the work demands, like I've alluded to, family responsibilities, personal needs can take a toll on them. A lot of fathers find themselves stretched thin, so that ongoing pressure can lead to burnout or emotional exhaustion. So sometimes people notice that in a lot of men in particular, they may appear or look to be checked out. They may not be as engaged, or they may isolate more. And so oftentimes people have depressive symptoms and they're not even aware. And sometimes it's just simply by being less engaged as they once were, low energy, different things like that. Self doubt is many fathers question if they're doing the right thing, whether it's making the best decisions for their kids or supporting their partner, simply trying to live up to expectations. So self doubt is a common and often silent struggle. A lot of people in general struggle with disclosing how they feel about themselves and how they may not feel the best about themselves, or how their confidence or self-esteem may be low. So having those honest conversations can help combat some of those thoughts that may be irrational for some people. Um, and with becoming a new father, or fatherhood, or parenthood in general, your identity shifts for some people. So becoming a father often brings changes in how a person sees themselves. Priority shift, times feel limited, and once defined them may not what once defined them may start to change. So that adjustment can be tough to navigate, especially when it happens quickly or without much space to process. So I've seen some of the clients I work with, their fathers, that when you ask them to describe themselves, that's sometimes the only thing they can talk about, which is great and it's important. But they start to lose or forget about some of the things they have outside of being a father or being a partner. And that sometimes leads to a lot of stress and burnout as well, because they've now uh, have allowed fatherhood to be pretty much all of what they spend their time doing. And that's an easy way to feel, stress and feel like you're overwhelmed. And then with the mental load, of course, relationships can change becoming a parent. Parenthood naturally impacts those relationships with partners, friends, and even family. So there's often less time, different emotional needs, and new expectations. So with intentional communication and understanding, these shifts can, without it, they can create tension, they can create distance. So sometimes things are different and no one discusses it. I had a client today discuss how he's a new father, and he talked to his partner about how he misses things before. And that was a hard conversation for her and for him, because it made them both feel like they were not happy with having a child. So that was a vulnerable moment for him that he's working through and trying to help his partner understand. It's not he regrets having a child, it's their relationship has changed so much that they don't spend time together really. So
Appreciate
what
that and giving
uh,
that whole view of some, not whole, but some of the different aspects of how it can arise and manifest itself and the like. Anybody have any questions on that, or any area for Anthony to delve into deeper? Feel free to put it in the chat. Don't see any, and you can also come off mute. All right.
so understanding the mental load of fatherhood is important because it creates space for real conversations and real solutions. So these aren't signs of failures for fathers, they're signs of how much is being carried. So the goal is to bring that weight into the light and normalize it for them, and talk about healthy ways to manage moving forward. So before we get into how to manage stress and how to decompress and how to cope better, oftentimes talking to my clients, their perception of their reality is sometimes just that it's not reality. They feel like things are one way, but they learn by having more in-depth conversation that things are different. So it's important that we, have a conversation about also different couples. That, it's not just heterosexual couples I work with. I work with, all different types of families and people who identify different ways. So some fathers who are in heterosexual relationships believe that 70% of them believe that the responsibilities are equally shared. And the research shows that that's not the case. It's a perception. So mothers still often carry the bulk of the mental load. This means they're more likely to take on behind the scenes tasks, managing routines, scheduling appointments, remembering the small details that keep the family running. So while the physical tasks might look evenly split, the invisible labor, the thinking, the planning, emotional coordination can often, fall more heavily on one partner than the other. So a lot of fathers, when you break it down, they think about just being there physically, but don't think about what all goes into. Sometimes your kid has a game, the father's at the game, but they don't realize what all went into the practices and the planning and the transportation and the logistics. So they're like, I'm always present physically, but sometimes it's a deeper conversation than that, especially when they can't understand why their partners feels like things aren't equally shared.
So, Anthony, if we can pause there, Yolanda's asked
Hmm.
another great question, and that is about the channel or path to help with the father's mental health. And so, what she's asked is that what's the best approach? Is it best to go through the mother to the father or partner? But do you have any thoughts about that, or is it de- dependent upon the relationships or what have you?
I think it's depending on the relationships. Everyone's relationship is different. I don't do provide marriage counseling or couples counseling. So a lot of times I'll get clients who are in couples marriage counseling for their individual therapy. So that gives them that outlet to have more time and space to work on things to bring back to those shared sessions with their couples and marriage therapists. And I always tell them that's a lot of value because you only have so much time in therapy in general, especially a shared conversation. So diving into some things, peeling back some things individually gives them, some empowerment, some confidence to be more open a lot of times. And when they are, whether they're in therapy or not, just having conversations at home with their partner. So it gives them a different perspective. It gives them things to reflect on. And a huge thing for me supporting a lot of fathers is if they're in a relationship, working with them on how to communicate effectively, how to approach and strategize a conversation, how to keep things in supportive language and not condemn or blame, where sometimes they feel like the conversation is lost quickly.
Thank you for that. Great question, Yolanda.
Then, discussing balancing work and family, particularly in heterosexual relationships, 35% of fathers who work full time, they reported high levels of work family conflict, while compared to their counterparts, 28% of mothers reported the same thing. So a big part of that comes from the pressure to perform at work while also being fully present at home. So attention many dads feel deeply, but they don't really discuss. So the demands of work life, demands of home life, they can oftentimes cause conflict in the home. So being able to, like we kind of discussed at the beginning, being able to sometimes separate, and create better boundaries with how your work hours or your schedules and things like that. If you get off work, being able to engage with your family compared to getting off work and then coming home potentially and working more. Um, and a lot of this just comes from being able to communicate your needs on both sides. As we shift to other couples I work with, the couples that not that I work with, but I support individually, LGBTQ plus couples, their mental load and their perception, it differs in many ways. So most of those couples, they believe that they have a shared responsibility because they don't have sometimes the typical conservative traditional gender norms and responsibilities. So they feel like things are shared in the home and they feel like there is fairness and equality. But they also face different stressors. And a lot of times that is the societal stressors, the societal pressures that because of what's happening inside the home, the external pressures start to affect the home life. So that's navigating systems that oftentimes aren't built for them, dealing with stigma or lacking support from extended networks. So those added stressors can weigh heavily even when the partnership is strong. So the home life, the family life is strong, but then they face different challenges because sometimes society isn't as open and welcoming and supportive as it should be. So, talking about all this, what does it all mean? It tells us about the mental load isn't just about who does what, it's about the emotional and cognitive effort behind the scenes. So, while different family structures experience that in different ways, the common thread is the need for communication, support, and awareness. So, no one feels like they have to carry it all alone. So, with that, let's have a moment to check in again.
I think we got a poll question coming up. We invite everyone in, whether it's from your perspective, but on a scale of 1 to 5, how often do you feel, or someone you know with the role of father feel overwhelmed in that role? So poll question will go up and invite you all in to rank it. Marie, do you have that? Okay. I don't see the poll up, but that's okay. Do you want to talk us through this a little bit, Anthony?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
So, the truth is feeling overwhelmed is common. So, especially when you're trying to juggle so many roles, being present with your kids, keeping up with work, supporting your partner, still finding a moment for yourself. So, the emotional toll of constantly showing up for others can build up quickly. So, that's why, we're shifting now in this conversation to practical strategies, for managing stress and regulating emotions. We'll explore tools that not only help you find relief in the moment, but also help you build resilience over time. So you're not just surviving, you're thriving, and you're being able to find ways to ground yourself and have more control in your life. And I think the poll question popped up, or maybe not.
You guys are going to fire me as the tech support. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Technical.
No, it's okay.
It's not moving past. It should. Oh, okay. Well, now it should show. Which one are you seeing now? Question 2, poll 2. Is it showing now?
I don't see it.
No. But that's okay. Let's
Yeah, that's
talk
okay.
about how to. There it is. There it is. Okay. So everyone feel comfortable. That's the first one. That's
Oh, see, that's what I thought it was doing.
They're all
They're
on
all
one,
up.
it looks like.
Perfect. So everyone, feel free to answer as you get the moment to. Anthony's going to continue to talk about it. And so, Anthony, I think these are some techniques that we can apply, and I think they apply to everything, but can you talk to us about how it might apply to the stressful situations of father or partner as they're on their journey?
Yeah. So these techniques, they differ, but the goal is still the same, is to be able to find calm, be able to find peace, be able to relax yourself and have more control with, your emotional regulation. So with breathing techniques, it's helpful to communicate one, but then give yourself space to be able to practice that. So with deep breathing, it can say there's a moment where you've had a tense conversation or a stressful day and you need to find a way to decrease your anxiety or stress. You can utilize grounding techniques. So deep breathing is a simple yet powerful technique where it helps calm your nervous system. So you inhale for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, you exhale for 4 counts, and then you hold again for 4. So this pattern helps calm your mind and reduces stress, making it easier to manage difficult emotions in real time. And learning and utilizing these techniques are helpful because they're portable. They can be used anywhere, whether it's at home, at work, in your car, on the airplane. That's the beauty in learning some of these, more simple techniques that also are very, very helpful and beneficial. And then the second technique is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a technique where you use your five senses to ground yourself. So you're able to engage in the environment and you can release overwhelming emotions by bringing yourself back to the moment. So for example, you take a moment to acknowledge five things you see, four things you can touch, three things you can hear, two things you can smell, and one thing you can taste. So it's a great way to reset yourself when the stress levels are rising. So it basically distracts your mind from the things that are probably causing you to be very stressed because you're focused on the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 things that you have to, locate in your environment. And then progressive muscle relaxation is a technique where you tense and relax different muscle groups in your body, starting with your toes and moving up to your head. It helps release physical tension. So reduce stress and promote relaxation. So it helps you become more aware of your body and where it holds stress. And by relaxing those muscles, you can alleviate some of that tension. So sometimes when people are stressed, they're tense and they notice it in certain part of their bodies. And that can, cause physical ailments, and that can cause, not just mental things, but start to impact them, physically and medically. So I always recommend these grounding techniques to my clients because they are simple if you practice. They are portable, which means you can use them pretty much anywhere, and they're appropriate, and it can be used anywhere. Unlike some of the times I have clients who have great coping strategies, but they're situational. They can't do certain things at work. They can't do certain things, while traveling. So they're only beneficial when when the environment is right and it's on their own terms. So they're incredibly beneficial tools when it comes to managing stress and overwhelming emotions.
Anthony, I would just say I'm writing those down. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is just something I haven't heard before. Maybe others have, but it just sort of, I think grounding is a great word in that moment. And it has you aware. I have a friend who talks about not just 360, but 720. And as you go through your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you get more grounded in the world around you and can work through it. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah. It's those techniques are simple, but I always recommend practice. It's like meditation, or for those who pray, it takes time, and it takes some repetition to be able to fully, benefit from these techniques. But they can be very helpful for many people. And as we shift now to more of the mental side of things, we'll discuss cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. That includes cognitive restructuring, cognitive reframing, cognitive challenging. CBT focuses on how your thoughts influence your emotions and actions. So by challenging and changing those thoughts, we can reduce stress and shift our emotional responses in healthier ways. So CBT techniques, I regularly use them with my clients. A lot of therapists discuss cognitive behavioral therapy and how it connects your thoughts to your feelings, to your actions or behaviors. If you think about something sad, you'll feel sad, and then your behaviors or actions might follow the sadness. So learning how to um, change the way we think, to change the way we view things and give things a different perspective. So with cognitive restructuring, it's the process of identifying and challenging negative or distorted thought patterns. So it helps you replace unhelpful thoughts with more balance and realistic. So a father might think, I'm not doing enough for my child. Though through cognitive restructuring, we'd encourage him to reframe that thought to, I am doing my best and it is okay to ask for help. This is a simple shift in thinking, and it can reduce unnecessary pressure and foster a more compassionate view of oneself. And a lot of times it seems simple, but it can be very difficult because when people feel how they do, sometimes it takes time to help them understand that it's not real, that it is irrational, that they don't have maybe the evidence to support that. Next one is cognitive reframing. So cognitive reframing is a technique about changing the way you view your situation to alter the emotional impact. Reframing helps you turn a negative experience into an opportunity for growth or learning. So a father might feel frustrated about missing a child's event due to work commitments. With reframing, he could view this as a chance to model responsibility and the importance of balancing commitments, making it a teaching moment rather than a source of guilt. Children will learn as they get older that there's some sacrifices, there's different commitments, and you may not be available for every single thing and every single person. So in those moments, it could be a learning experience for not just the father, but the child and the family as well. So working through some of the guilt that some parents hold because of their responsibilities, understanding that they may not have 100% perfect attendance at every single thing their child ever does, but having those valid and open conversations about why. And I think that's important too, um, working with fathers to be able to communicate that and not just hold that all into themselves. And last, cognitive challenging. It's a technique where you test the accuracy of the negative thoughts by questioning the validity of it. So the process helps you see your initial negative belief may not entirely be true. So this can be helpful in this way. If a father might think, I'm a terrible dad because I don't always get it right. Through cognitive challenging, you would ask, what evidence do I have to support that? Am I really failing? Or is it just a tough moment? So this helps break down the harsh self-judgment and cultivate a more realistic kind of view of self. A lot of times people just believe what they think. And if they don't uh, interject or no one asks them any questions, it just becomes their reality. A lot of fathers are doing very well, but they feel for whatever reasons that they're not.
One of the things I like about this, Anthony, is that whether restructuring, reframing, or challenging, instead of just sitting in our own mind and thinking the worst of, it helps us to reframe for ourselves. And it might, when Yolanda talked about maybe tools and how we might help, we too can also help reframe for the father, restructure for the father, and challenge for the father. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that goes along with some things we discuss and more and later is utilizing your supports, being open to feedback, being willing to communicate. So if you tell someone how you feel and they're a supporter, they can help with these techniques. They can restructure, reframe, or challenge those thoughts you have. And sometimes that's what a lot of fathers need. They need that help, they need that support, but they also have to be willing to share.
Thank you for that.
Of
As
course.
one of the topics that, as we move forward, if you're ready to do so, one of the topics that we do talk about, you have said, is taking care of self. Can you go into a little more detail because these are so valuable? We don't always think about, well, what is self-care, right? You talked about
Yeah.
breathing techniques and the like, but can you go in deeper?
Yeah. So self-care, it's in its title, but a lot of times people view it as a few different ways to go about that. So self-care can be physical activity, moving your body, whether that's exercise, whether that's just stretching, going for a walk, doing different things, going to places, seeing people, just moving your body. It can benefit your mood. It can benefit your overall wellness. So being physically active with your family, with your children, and for yourself can benefit everyone in the long run. And it really helps with, people's mental health. And like we talked about earlier with identity shifts, sometimes there becomes a loss of interest in hobbies or there becomes a lack of time. So still engaging in those or trying to carve out time to engage in those hobbies, the things you love to do outside of parenting, the things you love to do outside of work, whether it's sport, reading, gaming, creative outlet, making time for those things and not feeling the guilt or feeling like you're being selfish. And it helps, recharge and reduce stress. So continue that. Sometimes I have clients think about what things were like before maybe they had a child or multiple children. What did you like to do? What did you used to do? What are some things now that you may still can engage in, or what are some things you always wanted to do? And then figuring out how to strategize, whether they're single or have a partner, about how can they be intentional with making time for those interests and hobbies. A lot of people feel busy, but sometimes they don't sit down and actually look at their schedule and look at their time and how they're using it and manage it better. And then not negotiating with yourself on taking care of yourself. A lot of times when people are stressed, that's the first thing to go is what they do for themselves. And they negotiate that and give their mental and their physical to everyone else and other things that they feel like are more priority. And then, of course, my favorite is professional counseling. I believe that that's beneficial for a lot of people. It can be very helpful. It can provide a space that sometimes I hear people don't have anywhere else in their life. So sometimes seeing people talk about themselves for the first time is very interesting. And sometimes they struggle initially to realize like this is my moment to actually talk openly and freely without judgment, without bias, without someone interrupting. And it can take time for them to be comfortable doing that. But I've seen the change, I've seen the impact, I've seen the growth with especially a lot of fathers who they've said they've never talked about how they felt to anybody ever. And that's a lot to hear, but they understand now like there's a lot of power in learning how to communicate. And then social
Anthony, if I
connections.
could
Oh,
just
go
take a
ahead, sir.
minute on that.
Yeah,
And this counseling area seems like one that is always sensitive and always touchy. I just relate to this group and those who will listen to the recording later. When I think about professional counseling, it's somebody whose job, career, and experience is listening to these very issues. You're not the first one to tell them whatever you're about to tell them.
mhm,
And then for me personally, what I feel like is that it's one of the few places that you can just unload. You can
yeah,
just dump all your stuff and they peel it back. And oftentimes we say and we find just putting it out there and voicing it is huge. When you get somebody who's
right,
got that experience and they can give you back any one of the things that Anthony has talked about over the course of the last 45 minutes, it just really is a powerful thing. And so I strongly encourage counseling if individuals can get over their challenge, their hurdle, their obstacle, because it is an incredible environment to be able to provide some self-care for sure. Thanks, Ian.
right. Of course. And there's so many ways to go about finding a therapist online. Sometimes social media, Google, of course, and then if you have insurance, if you call them, they can give you a list of people who accept your insurance in your area. So it's a lot more accessible, especially with telehealth. So it's opened that up for that opportunity for a lot of people who may not have had it in the past. Um, and social connections are very important. You know, maintaining those friendships and staying connected to family members is, vital to reducing stress and isolation. So it helps you also gain emotional support. So as fathers, it's easy to fall in the trap of thinking, you need to do everything on your own. So leaning into your support network. And then quality time, whether that's with a partner, whether that's with friends and family, um, it helps with those relationship dynamics. Becoming a parent changes those dynamics, but if you don't invest time and create space for quality time, then those relationships will continue to shift or be negatively affected. So, as parents, it's important for them to spend time together, spend time separately, spend time with their family and friends, and create some balance there and continue to keep those connections because they're supports. So since we're talking about self-care, I would like to, take time to hear from people, not just fathers, how do they relieve their stress? What is some self-care routines or things that they do for themselves?
So, Anthony, if I can, real quick,
Mhm.
Yolanda's asked just another excellent question, and that is that in African American families, communities, therapy and counseling is taboo. How can we help our Black men to get that counseling or reach out or take that first step? What are some things that you found is successful or heard about?
Yeah. I think, a lot of things used to be word of mouth, and I've seen therapy really benefit people in that way, where now people are open to discussing that they have a therapist openly, publicly, on social media. And people have now viewed it as a part of their overall well-being. They go to the doctor, they go to the dentist, they, go to these other providers as they feel like they have to. Now people have incorporated therapy in that because they've learned that if they're better mentally, it helps all areas of their life. So I've had clients, and I think the younger generation has done a good job at just making it more acceptable, making it more um, of a easy conversation, and that has helped some of my clients as well, as they share their experiences, and now their friends and family want to try it because they are challenging those old traditional ways of viewing things, and they are challenging the idea, if they go to therapy or counseling, that means something is severely wrong with them. I think a lot of it comes from just people being open and willing to share, and now you can see people's experiences with social media. They'll openly talk about their therapist, or there's therapists on social media. So I think the accessibility with telehealth and more providers being um, utilizing technology to kind of break some of those barriers down.
So Anthony, one, I want to be
Mhm.
sensitive to time. Two,
Yeah,
it's been very powerful and impactful. Should we move to another topic, or where would you like to take us next on our journey in the
yeah, we can kind of move to briefly talking about strengthening relationships, and then we can get to the closing. So strengthening relationships is very important overall. It's okay to ask for help from those in your life, letting it be known that there's a need for you throughout your journey in fatherhood. And then, like we discussed earlier, staying connected. Without being connected, it's difficult to be supported, and that's important to continue to cultivate those relationships. So if you do need to ask for help, you have people that can potentially help you. I think a huge thing in partnership is avoiding resentment, and that goes back to our mental load and responsibilities of discuss how you feel. Be open to sharing that you feel like you do more, you do less, or you need help in that partnership as well. The resentment can lead to, longer term issues, or, bigger problems. And then strengthening your support systems. So seeking guidance, looking for help, when it comes to fatherhood, mentorship in some way, like you would do for anything else, or your career or something like that. And then finding other fathers. It's an imperative that you find other fathers, especially if you're a newer father, to get some support from. You may not have had a father, so in order to learn and to have real feedback, finding people who are doing just what you're doing, trying to figure it out, trying to navigate these things, and then utilizing your workplace resources as a support system. A lot of people's jobs have EAP benefits for some free therapy sessions. They also have other benefits that oftentimes people never know about or never ask about.
The other thing, just to point out real quickly, is that counseling, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, those are confidential. The EAP programs through your companies are confidential and the like, so you can get the care that you need, but then you can also communicate it with others as you deem and see appropriate. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, although you may go through your employer is not um, notified, or they don't receive details of your sessions and what's discussed. They, of course, know you're utilizing the sessions, but they don't know what's being discussed in the sessions or the topics. So it's still a safe, confidential space for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we get to the end and we wrap up, and I wanted to briefly discuss, some key takeaways, some strategies, action steps, and of course, resources. So we discussed grounding techniques, discussed different ways to practice breathing, muscle relaxation. We also discussed cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps you mentally change your negative thoughts into a different way to view things. And of course, self-care, doing things for yourself, making time, being intentional about that. And then with some action steps, we discuss normalizing these emotions and challenges, being okay with talking about the hard things. And in return, communicating how you feel, what you need, and what's going on with you can lead to, having that support and being in a position to not feel like you have to go it alone and carry everything, by yourself. It's just reminding yourself that it's okay to feel overwhelmed and it's a part of life in general, but of course it's a part of, fatherhood. And that's, that's a huge part. And just, being encouraged, understanding if you find support or you need support, it's available, and it's ways to reach out and connect with others who may know how to help you or may be experiencing the same thing, so you can support each other. So I have put together a list of resources that can be provided to those who would like to learn about apps or books or podcasts or support groups that are available. And that could be a really helpful tool, whether it's for you or for someone else that may benefit. And then also I can provide my contact information for those who want to discuss therapy or looking for a therapist or want to, learn more.
If I can, Anthony, and everyone, just greatly appreciate Anthony's dedication and work in this space, and information and guidance, insights he's provided. Thank you all for attending. Marie, thank you to Birthing the Magic for allowing the room and space for us to continue to learn and be on this journey together.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Anthony. This was excellent. I was taking notes. I did drop in the chat. We shared your website in the chat.
Okay.
We will send this recording. We'll send the recording to everyone who registered. And we can also include whatever resources that you want us to include, Anthony, in that email. We also, unless you all feel strongly about it, we share your contact information with Anthony. So that if he has a distribution list or if he's on social media, then he can include you in the mailings that he sends out. At 7 Eastern, we have our last workshop of the day. We're going to talk to a reformed OB and a doula about how to get the most from your prenatal visits. So please join us at 7 Eastern. And then tomorrow we close out our week with at noon Eastern with a conversation with Dr. Alicia Hodge called Little Baby Big Feelings or something to that effect, but we're going to talk about the emotional context of being a new mama, our new dad, but more focused on moms because we knew we had Anthony doing this wonderful discussion today. So thank you, everyone. If you haven't gotten your t-shirts, this is going to be like the outfit of the summer. Thank you, David, for being our model. Thank you, Anthony, so much. We appreciate you. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, all.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Anthony.